Thank you and welcome to the session. I'm pretty sure all of you, have talked about and heard about and asked questions around, what's changing in the workforce. We've talked about pandemic, we've talked about, kind of work from home, return back to office, all of that. So I'm hoping that this session, we will talk about a couple of things which are closer to home, which is HR for three of us. But, kind of what I've invariably seen, is, across different workshops and programs, we spend a lot of time talking about pandemic and what happened. And I think that we need to, kind of building off the previous presentation, I think that we need to start focusing on the fact that pandemic has now been about 12 to 18 months. It's gone. And we have to move on, right? It's had a very long-lasting impact on our lives and our minds, but I think it's time. So that having said, I think the reality of our lives is the fact that there is transformation happening all around. And this transformation is going to continue to ask more out of each and every one of us as individuals. So the same, kind of tried and tested frameworks and assumptions, I don't think are going to, kind of exist. So how do you bring in more flexibility, more agility in an environment where change is the constant, right? If we are talking about, bold transformations, and we're talking about things that need to happen differently, and I'll just make one anecdotal kind of comment. For a significant part of my career, I've been a traditional HR person. And at one point in time, kind of having worked with very large firms like McKinsey and Gartner, etc., I one fine day said that there is digital transformation, there's AI, there's robotics, and everything else which is happening around. And I don't think I have got into it. Yeah? And I think my fear basically came from the fact that if I don't make a shift, I will not be relevant in a few years from now. And that basically got me to suddenly get up and said, I'm going to join a tech consulting startup, which I knew nothing about. And I had to spend my time learning. So that's point number one. Point number two is that as I evolved in Incedo in my role, there were a lot of business requirements that were coming in. People became our big, people are our most important assets. And my CEO actually kind of said that you're so passionate about trying to contribute to business. He said, run the region. I think it took me a week to get over the shock. And then finally I said, okay, why not, right? And again, I had to go through that transformation and learn. I'm still learning, yeah? But I had to break my mindset. And so that's kind of where I want to anchor the starting point of this conversation. We've seen a lot of transformation and we've seen a lot of change happening around us. Change has now become the constant of our life. And I'm going to talk to both our panelists about what it means, in terms of the disruption, what's happening now, what's going to be coming in the near future. Second, what are the bold transformations that HR has to go through? And finally, what is the implications also about how we are approaching our own HR processes or talent management processes and frameworks. So with that, let me start with you, Sneha. Why don't you talk about what is the disruptive change or the transformation that you're seeing and you feel that you will continue to see in your organization?
Thanks for, first of all, having me here. It's a pleasure to be here today. I think to your earlier point, right, I think COVID, I know we have spoken about it a lot, but it's also been one of those definitive moments that has changed life and outlook and the way we operate as well quite significantly, right, in organizations and from an employee mindset as well. I think the fundamental shifts that I've seen happening within the organization and at industry at large as well, I think one being the nature of contracts is changing. right? I mean, we used to have people, we believed in long-term careers. People would join a company and, would contribute in a certain way. And there was a certain contracting there which happens, right? Which is more of a psychological contracting. I think that's shifting, right? I mean, we all have heard about the quiet quitting. We've heard about the great resignation, right? So that nature of contract is evolving even as we speak, right? So, and that's obviously having implications for us as organizations and as HR professionals as well. The second large shift within the organization, and again at industry at large, right, is the AI frontier, right? The disruption is happening even faster than anybody could have imagined. Something that we used to see in Avenger movies, right, till a few months back, of people doing a virtual sort of a connect, right? It's happening, right? And there's a Gartner report which also says that on an average, people will be spending 1 hour a day in the metaverse by 2026, right? And it's right here. So the speed at which the change is coming is faster than anybody could imagine, right? And how are we preparing for that as HR professionals and organizations is something that needs thought right now, because we're almost there. So I think these are sort of the two very dramatic shifts that I have seen. And the third part also being that well-being used to be an initiative, right? It's got so integrated with the employee expectations as well, that how, as organizations, do we view it, what do we do about it, and how do we sort of integrate that expectation of flexibility, of well-being in how we operate as HR functions and as organizations, I think is the third piece which is evolving. And I think these are the trends which are kind of shaping the way we approach organizations and HR as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sneha. Sabita?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I think it's afternoon, so good afternoon. Thank you very much, Team nasscom, for having me here. Always a joy to be back amidst our fraternity. We were just talking about it before I got in here, and I want to go back a little in the day when I started this morning. And I had a call driver supporting me because, we also need to prepare when we come down to speak, right? So I had this guy who was a gig worker, and I didn't realize it until he got his first call. When he got his call, the guy continued speaking about analytics. So he was a business analyst working in some other organization, and he does also gig working as a chauffeur. Now, this is something which occurred to me when we were walking in here. Now, why not bring in this anecdote here about what reality is? So is it so very wrong if we have our people, wanting to work elsewhere and probably earn a few bucks more, as long as they declare it, as long as they share it? So that's a mindset change. So taking off from where, we heard Shailaja speak and we also heard Sneha, I think, change is the constant is very cliched, but today it's disruption is indeed the constant. So every day you're going to be having disruption around you in some form or the other. So I want to go back to give you two examples, in the current organization, because I moved out of a 3-decade work in multinational organizations into this smaller company which is into the BFSI space. We are a fintech company, Market Simplified. So we wanted to re-look at the way performance management systems were conducted or held, because we all know how difficult the performance appraisal cycles are in every organization. A lot of time spent, but trust me, I've always come back feeling it's such a meaningless exercise, because many a time it just becomes a tick in the box. And feedback doesn't really reach an employee from a development perspective. The person we're going to be, we're talking about, the employee is already fixed, because the moment you tell him, all right, I'm putting you in this bucket on a 5-point grid or a 5-point rating scale, he's closed. He doesn't want to go beyond and listen to feedback. So we de-linked, we moved out, we call it a career management system. We said, come in with this theme, which is build your career. Now, build your career as in, they are allowed to choose. Yeah, ratings are a given. You can't do away with ratings because, we do have these systems in place, and we can't overnight differentiate people without ratings. So we all know the 9-point grid, we know the performance and potential on both the axes, and the 9 boxes, right? So people are put into different boxes. So the question I asked myself after I moved in here is it fair to the individual to just put him in a box, and then when he plans to leave, all hell breaks loose. And then comes, the most, what do I say, sort of not so very competent or not so very critical employee overnight becomes critical. And then, there is a lot of fight because delivery says you've got to give him this amount of an increment to retain him, things like that. So we re-looked at this process and we said, let's do away with this, process of giving X percentage just because of the rating. So in a particular rating, slab, we said we'll allow the line manager to decide and propose. Now this is basis the stretch assignment that an individual has undertaken in the organization, and this was announced as part of their objective setting. So the very goal setting exercise itself is flawed, and I'm talking from my own experience. So when we go back, most of the time 80 to 90% of our colleagues don't get to know what goals are set for them at the beginning of the year because the goals change, right? They're as quick and as fast-paced and agile as anything else. So are we actually creating an environment for them to try and reach those intermittent changes in the goals? This is what we re-looked at. So we went back to this framework of goal setting and we said, do away with the so-called SMART goals. Right? I'm not going to go into detail for paucity of time, but once that was fixed, we started doing this every 3 months. And the quarterly exercise was only to ensure development feedback was given. Again, an individual had the right to come up and say, all right, so we have something called take time to think. Take time to think is nothing but the individual coming up and saying, all right, I have upskilled myself and this is what I think I can contribute in. I would like to add on to the organization. So as long as they come up with something which is value adding to the organization, they know they have earned themselves brownie points to get up there. So we re-looked at this whole thing and we said, you are responsible for your career. So simple as that.
Fantastic. Sneha, let me, pick with you in terms of, when we think about the key asks from HR and the general, the general kind of assumption, okay, HR professional, needs to be people-oriented and needs to be empathetic and needs to be this, that, what's getting disrupted there? And also when you think about this transformation, not just in terms of what is changing in the role and the competencies, but how do you think people need to cope? How do you think people need to prepare themselves for it?
Sure, and it reminds me one of the interview questions that I think pretty much everybody gets asked, and the popular answer, I'm in HR because, I like people. But yeah, keeping that aside. So I think, see, HR has been in the spotlight since early 2020s, right? One fine day, the world woke up and your leaders was looking at you for policies, for guidance, for how do you manage business continuity in very uncertain times? How do you design policies? How do you manage productivity, right? In a time which was uncertain, nobody had the answers. There was no playbook, right? And there were no best practices. So I think one of the things that has shifted and is also evolving is that historically, as HR, we've been very internal focused. It's been about people, it's been about team, it's been about policies, right? I think what shifted and what's evolving is that we are moving from being HR leaders to organizational leaders, right? And what I mean by that is that it's no longer about, I'm going to make this policy for my organization, right? It's about how am I integrating the different things that are happening around me? What is the external reality? What is the internal complexity? And how do I bring that all together, keeping people at the center and front of it, right? So I think that evolution of being an HR leader to being an organizational leader is happening, and it's also the expectation. I don't think it is about HR having a seat on the table anymore. HR has the seat at the table. It's also not about speaking up anymore. I think HR is speaking up enough, but it's about the shifting of mindset from being able to think internally to having an integrated view of the externalities, internalities, and being able to bring that together in a cohesive format. I think that's one big shift which is happening. The second shift, I think most businesses, everybody is data-led in some way or the other, right? The new age business is a little bit more so because just the virtue of the nature of the business, you get millions of customer data, you process, your teams work with that every day. So that data orientation is also pretty high, right? But that oftentimes does not translate into HR. I think at best we are stuck with our metrics of attrition rate. Okay, if you're slightly better, maybe high performance attrition. I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit cynical today, but I think that evolution in terms of really being data led and not just being stuck at metrics, right? I mean, data doesn't mean anything unless you're able to derive the right insights and you're able to act on those insights as well. So I think that's the other shift that as a function where we need to evolve and we need to make in terms of how do we drive that level of data orientation. The third piece, which is a little bit of an evolution in my mind, I think we've always been people-centric, right? Why did you do HR? People. So we've always been people-centric. But I think the new world involves a different kind of people-centricity. And what I mean by that is that it's not about, maybe it's a little bit about one-on-one relationship, but that doesn't scale, right? If you've got to scale, you have to have empathy and people-centricity at scale, right? So how do you, one, shift the lens from I need productivity from my people to I genuinely care for my people, right? And that again is a mindset shift. And the second part of it being that how do you create experiences thinking that, you know, what do I want my employee to feel? Right? And then work backwards from there to say that, you know, okay, now how do I design a system and how do I design a process to be able to do that? Yeah. So I think those are the three fundamental pieces where HR needs to evolve, and I think we are evolving in certain dimensions, but I think on data front, empathy front, the way we think and the way we operate needs to evolve as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Sabita, let me put you in a bit more of a spot in terms of, so if you were to say two things that HR should start doing, whether it's competency, capability, whatever, and a couple of things that we should stop, what would that be?
I think, you know, HR should actually continue to be, if they haven't been doing, culture ambassadors. Because to me, you know, culture and values of the organizations are sadly being ignored in this conundrum of, you know, chatbots and artificial intelligence and so on. End of the day is fundamentally people we are dealing with, and it's because of them that we are there in our jobs. So I think to us, you know, we are seeing the significant shift happening in HR people or HR professionals moving out of their comfort zones and trying to propagate and ensure you reward the kind of values, right? So you have at the center of this framework, you have what is called the purpose, the values, which are very, very important. And if purpose and values are not integrated together and not rewarded adequately, your reward recognition programs should reflect these principles of the organization. So I think HR has started doing it. Many an organization today has individual excellence awards around values, right? They call them value champs and so on. So you need to ensure that it's established across the organization. The second shift that we have seen now is in the way, you know, the ambassadors within the organization have scaled up to become mentors of the organization, right? So gone are the days when, you know, you always had to look outside to get your training support, right? You have umpteen vendor partners today who come forward when you want a training program. Now today you see that within the organization you have so much of talent which has not been probably focused on or not highlighted. And we see the significant shift because there are a lot of people who are probably, this is a skill industry, right? I come from IT, so in a skill-based industry you have people who actually price themselves for the skill talent that they bring to the table. It's not always, you know, economically feasible or viable as a proposition to keep on hiring somebody with 3x, 4x, 10x. So it makes sense to give somebody a career progression within the organization. So by engaging with mid-management, and that is a big shift because today mid-managers, the titles don't really matter. It's the value that somebody brings to the table that matters. Right? So people could be called consultants, people could be called assistant general manager or vice president, doesn't really mean much. So people at mid-levels are also transitioning from that, you know, I am a leader, I'm a manager, to how can I be a leader? How can I be an employee advocate? And that is a big shift which HR has to and should be doing. Because HR and only HR can probably bring that shift in making mid-management aware that they play a larger role in the life of people they're responsible for.
Yeah, that's a very great point, Sabita. And one thing I would add is that, you know, I think leadership is no longer about power. There's a quote which goes something like, leadership, power is not the currency of leadership, but trust is, right? And how do we enable our leaders to be able to bring in that? Because with that is where we'll be able to build that sense of belonging with an organization. which is a hard problem today, right? I mean, we have distributed workforce, right? People are working in hybrid models and sometimes even completely remotely. So how do you bring in that sense of belongingness and how do you build trust in the times that we are living in?
So I'd like both of you to, and maybe you can start with, talk about at least one initiative that you've completely changed the frame, and kind of modified it to the current environment, and then we can, maybe get you to talk about benefits piece. So
we have moved out of the traditional demand for compensation hikes into pay for performance. A significant part of the compensation is attributed to people who have gone above and beyond, okay, and sort of shown, their competencies in stretch assignments, delivered and added big value to the organization. This could be beyond their regular comfort zones. It could be dealing with an external new client, participating in bid proposals, and I'm talking about people who are hardcore developers or programmers in the organization. They go beyond because those are areas that they are wanting to explore, but they're not being given an avenue within the organization to perform on or scale up on. So they pick up something on their own. In all probability, they could be gig working elsewhere doing that. But that's okay, right? As long as they're able to deliver value to the company and ethics are intact, the client doesn't complain, everything is good. So that's something we'll explore.
I think what we have done is that we have taken cognizance of, we have different kind of people, right? And everybody has unique needs, right? And that's what we've started operating with. And I think one of the core things that we have realized is that to build a deeper sense of engagement with the organization and a sense of belonging, inclusion is the core, right? So how do we foster that? So to give you an example, right, we started to relook at our leave policy, right? It was a very flexible one. I mean, anybody could take leaves, which also meant that, research says if you have unlimited leaves, people don't use leaves, right? So what we did was we started from thinking, okay, why do people need to take time off, right? And we started building it out from there. So we introduced things which could work for various different people. Instead of sickness leave, it was, if you want to take a day off for your mental health, that's absolutely fine. We added menstrual leaves for our women employees, which was again very well appreciated. We were skeptical while doing these things, right? But what we realized was out of every three, 1 out of 3 women use it on a very regular basis, and that's 365 days since start of January that the leave has already been utilized, right? So we saw some of these pieces, right? And we realized that we have a lot of employees who have pets, right? I mean, people ended up adopting during the time of the pandemic. We introduced pet care leaves. So we've gone and done some of these pieces which can, can fit the needs of a very diverse and unique workforce as well. And similarly, on our medical benefits week, we made our parental policies, leave policies applicable to our live-in and LGBTQ couples as well, our medical insurance policies. And similarly, all our parental policies are LGBTQ friendly. Yeah, so we've made some of those changes which can help which can help drive that culture of inclusion, which are flexible, and which we feel in today's times, you've got to keep listening, you've got to keep adapting, you've also got to keep looking outside to be able to do some of these things.
Sabita, before we turn it over to the audience, I know that you were talking about this one example of, kind of relooking at how we think about benefits for an offer. So why don't you briefly tell us that? I know that we've already been given the timeout signal, but I think it was very interesting, so maybe you should just touch upon it.
You're talking about
the offer that, and he wanted to kind of put it in his C2C.
Yeah, all right. Now, thank you so much for reminding me on that, Shailaja. We have situations where today insurance policies are not really picked up by the millennial generation, right? Many of them come up and say, I have an elder sibling who's taking care of it. Can I do away with it because I would like to increase my CTC? There was this instance, we were talking about it in the break, so Shailaja just prompted me on that, where this individual said, I want a higher CTC because that will help me eventually when I have to look out for a job. And he was very vocal about it. Now, he joined the organization when I assured him that, all right, now this was a case which was unique because he was a very critical skill and we needed him immediately. So I tried getting him a niche skill bonus and things like that, didn't work. He He was very adamant and he didn't want the insurance policies. We had to re-look at our policy segment and then we had to get approvals in place. So we said, let's explore, why not? We came back and we said, we're changing the policy for you and we are fine if you don't take it, as long as you give us an undertaking which says, I will not apply for a corporate buffer kitty should there be an eventuality at my personal front. So that was okay because he gave us an undertaking and he said, I will not come back to the organization. I know I had many people come back to me, vociferously saying this is not on, but that is it, because if you want to deal with a different kind of workforce spanning generations, I think we need to be nimble-footed and change this. And I was just picking up from where, we just heard Sneha talk about leaves. So we came out too, we changed the entire leave policies. We said no sick leave, because inadvertently or otherwise, people would want to keep taking sick leaves. So we said, give them a bouquet of leaves, and the leave bouquet would allow them to take TOIL, which is time in lieu of, any time. And you just need to apply the previous day and say, I'm on toil tomorrow. Now, the moment you allow them to become responsible for the leaves they take, I have seen that there's no one who is actually misusing this new policy. So it's either a privilege leave or a time in lieu of. And this is over and above the other. We have a 14-day bereavement leave. We have paternity leave, maternity leaves, obviously. So people, I suppose, respond favorably when you take into account their needs and requests.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sneha and Sabita, for sharing your thoughts. Do we have time? Okay, we don't have time for audience questions, but we are going to be around. So please feel free to reach out to us and ask whatever questions and thoughts that you have, and we're absolutely happy to engage with you.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to NASSCOM YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.